today I'll be answering some of the most popular questions people have about traveling to Japan. So awesome. This video is brought to you by all my Patreon supporters. Go Team Awesome! Traveling in general is a fun but stressful activity. Planning locations, booking hotels and flights, and creating an itinerary is already enough to keep you busy. But on top of that, when coming to Japan, you have the added pressure of the language barrier. And the fact that there's a lot of things that are different in Japan compared to other countries makes it even harder to know what is and what isn't okay. That's where I come in, Guru Oz. Having lived, worked, and traveled in Japan for over 10 years, I can be your spiritual, motivational, and planning guide. For detailed travel spots and locations, you can use my travel videos using this playlist. But in this video, I want to talk more generally about questions that people have for me when they're traveling to Japan. Yes and no. So if you're coming to Japan and you're going to be traveling to very popular tourist destinations, like places in Tokyo like Asakusa or Shibuya or Skytree, or places in Japan like Osaka, Kyoto, or Nara, I think you can get away with not knowing any Japanese. All of these places, these tourist spots, usually have a lot of English signage. They also have a lot of people who work at the hotels or the attractions or restaurants or shops in the area, and they all have a pretty decent grasp on English and have a lot of experience dealing with foreigners. Maybe just learn a few phrases in Japanese like arigatou gozaimasu, thank you, sumimasen, excuse me, sorry, Tokyo eki wa doko desu ka? Where is Tokyo Station? Ikura desu ka? How much? Mizu o kudasai. Water, please. Now, if you're planning to come to Japan for a longer period of time, or you're going to places that are a little bit off the beaten path that aren't popular for foreign tourists, or you're planning to meet Japanese people and befriend them and try to get more deeper into the Japanese culture, then I would say yes, you need to know a little bit of Japanese. Especially in prefectures in Japan that not many tourists visit, like Akita or Iwate, or parts of Kyushu, places like that where there's not a lot of tourist destinations, Japanese would go a long way in those places. In these places, even actual tourist spots you'll go to, you probably won't find a lot of English, both in terms of people speaking it or signs. I'll say yes because crime specifically targeted to tourists like pickpocketing or robbery or violent attacks or scamming, stuff like that is very rare. As long as you're not walking around at night with your wallet open in the middle of the red light district all drunk, you should be fine. That being said, you still should take care of your belongings and be very safe about things, especially in crowded places like Asakusa or Harajuku or places Shibuya. In those places, maybe you might want to be a little bit more cautious because of the big crowds. In general though, in Japan, you'll hear many stories of people forgetting their purses or wallets or dropping their phones or whatever off somewhere in a cafe, restaurant, or on the street, and it having been returned with all money intact or with no problems. In general, you shouldn't be worried about any kind of specific crime, but like I said, just watch your back. That warning sounded a lot more dangerous than I was trying to make it. The reason I say that is because my friend who I went to a movie theater with in Shinjuku, she took out her wallet to get some popcorn, then we went into the movie theater, and somewhere between the counter of the popcorn to where she sat, her wallet went missing, and they found it a couple of days later, and it was inside a garbage can in the bathroom with all the money gone. So it can happen, but in my over 10 years of being in Japan, I've never had anything stolen. I've never come across any kind of violent acts. I've never been mugged, or I've never been like witness to any kind of robbery. Or I think that the worst thing that happened was I was in Roppongi on a Saturday night, and I was walking by this club, and there was these two people in like a fist fight. But I haven't seen any kind of crime directed at tourists specifically. Compared to many countries, not just in Asia, but around the world, you'll find Japan is probably the safest country. This is a really difficult question to answer because it really depends on how much you want to do in Japan and how much of a boss you want to be while doing it. So flights to Japan, depending on what country you're coming from, can be anywhere from $500 to like $1,500. So make sure you have at least that. For hotels, depending on the location of the hotel and the size of the hotel and what type of hotel you want, it could be anywhere from a small hostel or a capsule hotel for like $30 a night to a really fancy Japanese ryokan or fancy brand name hotel for thousands of dollars a night. For example, when I went to this hotel with my friend Ryan, the room that he was staying in was a $5,000 a night hotel room. In terms of transportation, if you want to do a cheap way and you want to be like backpacker styles, you can do night buses, you can do local trains and stuff like that to keep the prices low. If you're coming from outside of Japan, you can also get a Japan Rail Pass. That can be pretty cheap if you're going to be going to a lot of places outside of Tokyo. Or if you want to go all fancy, you could take Shinkansens all the time, or you can take taxis, and that will also bring your costs up a lot. In terms of food, you can dine at really nice, fancy Western style or Japanese style restaurants and pay $100, or you can go as little as $5 a meal if you decide to eat at places like Yoshinoya, which is like a gyudon restaurant which serves like beef on top of rice, and it's like a traditional Japanese fast food. There's tons of local restaurants, tons of izakayas, yakitori bars, sushi, standing sushi shops. All these places are pretty cheap, so you could actually get by pretty decent with still eating good food but not spending too much. I would say not including flight and not including accommodations, just for tourist stuff and for food, I would say plan to bring about ichiman or 10,000 yen, which is about $100 US per day. But if you plan to go to places like Disneyland, USJ, Robot Restaurant, or really fancy restaurants, then definitely expect to pay a lot more. You'd think places like Tokyo, which is the most populated city in the world and has many bars, restaurants, clubs, hostess clubs, and nightlife, would have a 24-hour train system. But even in big cities like Tokyo, Yokohama, Osaka, and Nagoya, the trains and buses usually stop service around midnight. The more popular and cosmopolitan the area is, the more likely the trains stop later. But in general, plan to leave wherever you are around midnight. Otherwise, you're gonna have to stay out all night until the trains reopen around 5 or 6 a.m. And if you're not in those busy zones, most trains and buses stop around 11 or sometimes even earlier. Especially towns that don't have a train or like a subway system, you might have the last bus being around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. even. So if you are planning to travel to places that are not like a Tokyo, definitely either rent a car or be part of some kind of tour group. The good thing about rental cars in Japan is they are pretty cheap and they provide English assistance and English GPS, so it's pretty easy to get around. I guess since I've lived here for over a decade on and off, and I've been to so many different places, I've lived in 3 different areas of Japan. So for me, I'm a bit biased, but I would still say, thinking back to when I first came to Japan, when I knew zero Japanese. But despite all that, I would say the answer would still be no, it's not that hard. It's surprisingly easy to get around. All the maps, the signs, and stations have labeled both in Japanese and English, and there's a lot of English signage. And a lot of the trains announce the stations in English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. You should definitely be using either Google Maps or Yahoo Travel, or apps like Hyperdia or Navitime. Those apps and those map kind of things are perfect in terms of showing you timing, platforms, where to get on, where to get off, which trains to take, and the English translations of each thing as well. And another thing I highly recommend is to have a Suica or Pasmo card, or whatever it's called in the area you're in Japan. Basically, it's like a card where you charge and you can use it for trains, buses, subways, and even for things like drinks at vending machines or buying stuff at the convenience stores. I would say, compared to other countries like maybe Thailand or Vietnam or Cambodia, where a guide would be really handy to help you get around the town, I would say in Japan you don't really need a guide. Japan is pretty easy to get around and it's very safe for foreigners, so I would say you'd be fine just going out on your own. But if you want to know something more specifically, you want a deeper dive into a location, for example, if you want to know more about the history about a specific location like Asakusa, or you want to get a better understanding of some of the places, if you're, for example, a really hardcore anime and manga fan, maybe hiring someone who's familiar with the otaku subculture would be a good thing to do if you decide to go to Akihabara. I guess it really depends on how deep you want to get into the culture and how comfortable you are traveling on your own. If you're one of those people that just likes to go out on your own and explore the city, then definitely you can do that without having a guide or a translator. I would say 98% of the time, yes, they are. And even if they don't like you, they'll still be kind. It's something in Japanese culture called honne tatemae, where it's like your true feelings versus your surface feelings. It's that fake smile of politeness. And specifically, it's in the culture to be extra polite to strangers or customers or guests. In fact, when you're out and about in Japan, whether it be a hotel, a tourist attraction, or a shop, you'll probably have the best service you've ever had in your life. Even on the street, most people will go out of their way to make you feel comfortable and to help you out and make your visit a positive one. That being said, there's always that 2% of the population that's always in a bad mood or nasty to everyone around them. Racism and bigotry is a universal thing, so there'll always be people around who will treat you that way and look down on you and just make you feel small. And I have had those experiences, but honestly, there's been only a handful of them, and considering I've been here for so many years, that's not that bad at all. I think the worst that you'll feel, as in big cities like in Tokyo, where it's crowded and everyone's running around, you might get ignored or you might get kind of like just pushed to the side, if anything. But in small towns and less touristy places, you'll probably most likely be looked at in awe, and people will go out of their way to help you out. I've only heard of a few places that don't allow foreigners, and most of them involve red light things like brothels, soap lands, or strip clubs or stuff like that. And even despite that, there's tons of other alternatives to those places that you don't have to worry. In terms of regular places like restaurants, shops, tourist destinations, and stuff like that, I've never had come across any kind of only Japanese people system. I have heard of or seen some shops a long time ago that sometimes said no foreigners allowed or something like that, but those shops have either disappeared or they've changed their ways. I think some places maybe might be hesitant to serve you if you don't speak Japanese, so there might be because of the English barrier, but I don't think they will refuse service. They just might be uncomfortable. I didn't really want to answer this question, but it has been asked to me, so I thought it's fair enough I should put it in this list. But the actual penetration is illegal in Japan. But anything and everything beyond that is perfectly okay. So when you're drinking or when you go out to a nightlife, you might find these shops that are really lit up with a lot of like kind of sketchy posters and stuff, and you'll see guys going in and out. Those places usually are, I guess, a one-stop shop for the hentai. It's like a room that has a list of a lot of places and things that you can do or have done to you. And depending on your tastes and your budget, they can arrange you to do those things or get those things done to you at a price. And they get a commission for sending you there. Anyway, I don't know too much of the details, but pretty much if you have a fetish, that's the place to go, and they'll find something to help you find that fetish. But as long as there's no actual penetration, anything's a go. And maybe those kind of places, maybe foreigners might not be allowed because they don't speak Japanese, or even if you are a foreigner, they might allow it, but they might double or triple charge you because they can. So I would say avoid those places anyway, regardless of if you're allowed to go or not. 5 years ago, I would have said not really. All the restaurants serve meat and seafood, and even the dishes that are considered vegetarian have some kind of meat product or meat base to it. But recently, just like many other countries, a lot of people, especially young people, have switched to the vegan diet. So many restaurants now include gluten-free, vegan, and organic menu options, and entire restaurants that are 100% vegan are available. But just to be clear, these things are available mostly in big cities in Japan. In places like Tokyo, Osaka, or Yokohama, or Chiba or Nagoya, you might be able to find good vegan options. But in smaller towns in Japan, you will still not be able to find that many vegan-friendly places. You could probably still end up finding something that's vegetarian or contains no meat, but you might have to end up surviving off of salads, edamame, and tofu. Once again, 5 years ago, I would say no, but things are changing. From Japanese media and TV, you might think Japan is very accepting of LGBTQ, as there are many TV celebrities like Matsuko Deluxe or Ai Haruna who are quite popular in Japan. But in regular society, being lesbian, gay, or transgender is still very taboo, and most people are not out of the closet. However, now there is a gay pride parade, and there's a lot of same-sex couples feeling much more comfortable out in public. Same-sex marriage is still not legal in Japan, but the government now gives out same-sex partnership certificates, which are kind of like marriage certificates. But technically, same-sex marriage is still illegal. And things are changing. For example, love hotels used to not allow same-sex couples from entering, but now most of them, if not all, do. So I would say it's not gay friendly, but it's gay tolerant and moving towards being gay friendly. Tattoos will not be a problem out and about, especially if you're out in big tourist areas and you don't look Asian. Tattoos are usually a sign of Yakuza, so if you don't look Japanese and you don't have those big sleeve tattoos, most people are just gonna know that you're a foreigner who has a tattoo. And some places like beaches, amusement parks, water parks, places like that still have signs saying that no tattoos are allowed, but slowly these places are changing as well. Also, even in Japan, a lot of Japanese younger people are getting tattoos. It's becoming more popular. And even though some places like hot springs or onsens don't allow tattoos, or even my gym doesn't allow tattoos, as long as you cover it up with a band-aid or some kind of patch, you should be fine. No, you don't. Most places provide spoons and forks as an alternative if you don't want to or you don't know how to use chopsticks. Possibly though, there might be some small restaurants, some like mom and pop shops or like food stands outside that provide only chopsticks. But generally most restaurants have other cutlery. And if you're paranoid about offending the locals or anything like that, don't worry about it. If you are not comfortable with chopsticks, you don't have to use chopsticks. No one's gonna hate you for that. And if you're worried about going to a place that doesn't provide other cutlery, you could always bring a portable like plastic fork or spoon, or even buy one at the 100 yen shop in Japan. I would say a big no. All hard drugs and even marijuana is still illegal in Japan, and it's strictly enforced. If you try to bring any illegal drugs into Japan, you will most likely be arrested, jailed, and eventually deported. So I would say hold off on your cravings until you get home. And despite the strictness of marijuana laws, weed is getting really popular in Japan. But I would still not seek it out and stay away from it just in case. Just to let you know, there are some drugs that are legal in US but are illegal in Japan. Things like Adderall or even Sudafed for cold medicine or anything that contains codeine is illegal to bring into Japan. So be careful. I would say every season Japan has its good points and bad points. Here's a list of some of the good and bad things in the season. Summer is very hot and humid. It's the rainy season in June, so it rains a lot. The Obon holidays are in August, so it gets very crowded and prices get very high. But summer is also a great time for many fireworks and a lot of Japanese festivals. Spring has Sakura season. Sakura season is popular and you can see cherry blossom trees and have parties under the trees. It's very rainy in April and May. Temperature wise though, spring is very good. It's not very hot or cold. Winter, it doesn't snow much except in the north. And if you do like snow, then Hokkaido is a great place because there's also the snow festival and a lot of skiing and snowboarding. And in general, if you're anywhere in Japan, there's a lot of Christmas illumination and lightings. Fall is very popular for viewing of the leaf changing. It's not very cold or hot, so it's also good temperature, although there can be some rainy and typhoon season as well in October. And if you're into cosplay and stuff, then you might like the amazing Halloween festivals and parades that happen during Halloween. Well, there you go. Those are some of the most popular questions that I receive about coming to travel to Japan. Did I answer all of your questions? Are there any other questions you think that should be on the list? Let me know in the comment section. Also, stay tuned because in my next video, I'll be talking about some of the popular questions I get about living in Japan, not just traveling. To support my channel, please consider being a Patreon supporter. For as little as $1, you will get life updates and videos about Japan not available on YouTube. Also, if you're looking for a smarter, safer, and better way to surf the net, please check out NordVPN. It allows you access to sites that are blocked in your country, access to streaming content not available in the area, and safe and secure browsing from anywhere in the world. If you sign up for NordVPN, use my code OzzyAwesome and you get 70% off plus 1 month free. Check out the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Please thumbs up if you like this video and share. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel because my videos are awesome. OzzyAwesome. Take care and see you next time. Peace.